She thought she could scare my neighbor, but she didn't know I was already one step ahead. Karen, the HOA president, strutted down the walkway like she owned the neighborhood. Clipboard in hand, rules memorized, voice sharpened to perfection. She was ready to punish anyone who dared break her carefully curated little world. Today's target? A single mom who had accidentally left a trash bin a foot too far from the curb. I watched from my porch, arms crossed, calm like a king observing a minor battle unfold. Karen's words were sharp, rehearsed, full of authority, the kind that makes people flinch. But I wasn't worried. I'd already quietly checked the HOA bylaws, filled out the correct forms, and even flagged her term for review. She had no idea. She waved her clipboard at my neighbor, rattling off fines and mandatory corrective actions. Every word she spat felt absurd, exaggerated, almost comical if it weren't so toxic. My neighbor's shoulders slumped, embarrassment creeping in, but I stayed silent, letting Karen's performance play out. Then I smirked ever so slightly, sipping my coffee like a king enjoying a sunrise. Every threat she made, every rule she enforced, was already powerless. She had no clue that her actions were about to backfire spectacularly, that the quiet, patient man watching from the porch was about to turn her little reign into a lesson she'd never forget. And in that moment, I knew sweet justice was already in motion. Karen just didn't know it yet. Before we continue, tell us where you're watching from. It makes us so happy to see how far our stories travel. And please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Karen's smug confidence was starting to crack, though she didn't know it yet. She paced back and forth in front of my neighbor's house, waving her clipboard like it was a sword, each threat growing louder, each accusation more ridiculous than the last. "You think you can ignore the rules? Think again," she barked, voice dripping with self-importance. I stood calmly on the porch, kingly, coffee in hand, letting her rant play out. Inside, I had already quietly submitted the official form that could remove her from office. Every furious word she spat was going straight into the record, and every second of her performance was evidence that her authority was slipping. My neighbor, tense and embarrassed, tried to explain, but Karen barely listened. She was too wrapped up in her imagined victory, completely unaware that her power was evaporating with every tick of the clock. Then came the subtle hints of panic. Karen glanced at me briefly, confused by my calm expression. She didn't understand that the quiet man on the porch was already controlling the game. Her smirk faltered and her gestures became frantic. The clipboard that once felt like a weapon now looked comically small, powerless against patience, planning, and the law. I took a slow sip of coffee, kingly and unshaken, letting the tension build. Karen still thought she was winning, but her reign was quietly unraveling, and soon the sweet justice she never saw coming would land squarely on her. Karen's confident swagger was fading. She waved her clipboard frantically, trying to regain control, but every word she shouted sounded smaller, weaker, almost ridiculous. My neighbor flinched, still tense, but I stayed calm, standing tall on the porch like a king watching a storm pass. The subtle panic in Karen's eyes was priceless. She didn't see it yet, but the form I'd filed, the one quietly submitted hours ago, had already started moving through the HOA board. Every outrageous threat, every overblown fine was now meaningless. Her reign, built on intimidation and self-importance, was cracking under its own weight. Neighbors peered through windows and across the street, drawn to the drama, faces curious and slightly amused. Karen didn't notice them. She was too busy trying to intimidate, not realizing that her target, me, had already turned the entire situation into a victory. I poured my coffee slowly, deliberately, savoring the moment. Kingly, calm, unshaken. Her frantic gestures, wild eyes, and trembling clipboard were all proof of a simple truth. Patience and preparation beat arrogance every time. Then the first ripple hit. Karen's phone buzzed, an email notification confirming that the board had acknowledged the recall form. Her face went pale. She stammered, tried to explain, tried to regain control, but the power had shifted completely. I smiled politely, quietly victorious, savoring the sweet, gentle justice unfolding. Karen didn't need shouting to realize she had lost. The calm, careful king had already won. Karen froze mid-gesture as the reality hit her. Her power was gone. The recall form had been officially acknowledged. Her term as HOA president ended. Every threat, every shout, every attempt to intimidate my neighbor had evaporated into nothing. She looked flustered, defeated, clutching her clipboard like a lifeline she had lost. I remained calm, kingly, watching the scene unfold. My neighbor exhaled a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding, relief washing over her. The street, which had been tense with curiosity, now hummed with quiet approval. The moral of the story was simple. Patience, intelligence, and a little strategic planning can beat arrogance and bullying every single time. Karen muttered excuses under her breath, shuffling away in humiliation, while neighbors peeked through windows, some even smiling at the poetic justice. No yelling, no theatrics, just quiet, undeniable victory. I smiled politely, sipping my coffee like a king, enjoying the sunrise. Justice had been served, the single mom was protected, and the neighborhood finally breathed freely again. The end. If you enjoyed this story, tell us. Do you think Karen got what she deserved? Share this story with your loved ones and tell us where you're watching from. It makes us so happy to see how far our stories travel. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe for more HOA showdowns, clever revenge, and satisfying payback stories.